The economic collapse was just confirmed. Hey, Bulls and Bears, back with another dose of economic reality. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Another example, another piece of evidence that the economy is cratering. Of course, the stock market's not going to be the indicator. The stock market, they can just keep that pumped up. Why? Because, 90% of all stocks are owned by the top 10%, and the wealth continues to flow up to the top 10% like we've never seen before. This is a wealth transfer happening right now. But take a look at this here. U.S. manufacturing just extended its slump now. U.S. manufacturing extended its slump. Does this sound like a recovering economy? Does this sound like the consumer is strong? If the consumer is strong, wouldn't we see a bigger need for manufacturing because people are buying more items, right? It's simple, but take a look at this. This is how bad it is, and we're going to be approaching a record streak here if the economy doesn't shape up here. U.S. manufacturing contracted for a third straight month in June, but listen to this: the contraction in manufacturing happened in the 19 of the last 20 months. So in 19 of the last 20 months, almost 2 years now, manufacturing has contracted. Right? Where is the recovery? Where's the strong consumer that we're told about? Right? This whole thing, folks, is one big scam. Right? And it gets more wacky. Take a listen to this. Listen to this quote. Quote, "We expect the manufacturing sector to remain weak over the next couple quarters," unquote. That's Oliver Allen, senior U.S. economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics. For two more quarters. What's going to happen after 2 quarters? Is manufacturing going to come roaring back because people are going to have a lot more money in 2 quarters from now? That puts us, to the end of the year? What's going to happen at the end of the year so everybody's going to have so much money that the demand is going to pick up and manufacturing is going to come roaring back, right? That's a joke, folks. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments, folks. Here's the truth. Things are going to continue to get more expensive. Unless we see some sort of collapse or rug pull on this money creation, there's no stopping inflation. It's going to keep going higher and higher. They keep flowing and throwing more money at the problem, flowing more money out into the economy, putting fuel on the fire, right? Making it easier for banks to loan out money, and nothing's being done to really restrict it here. All right, let's move on. Another thing we talked about here that was going to happen. Remember the student loans that were going to resume? Well, they did resume last October. And remember I said it wouldn't be permanent. We'd have to go back. Take a look at what was just came out today. This is out of ABC 6, one of these local networks. 3 million student loan borrowers to be placed in payment pause. So what are we in, July? So they couldn't even last, barely 9 months with their loans resumed. They have to repause student loans for 3 million borrowers. And it's going to get worse. It's going to be more borrowers are going to need help and assistance. They're going to have to pause this. Remember, pauses happened back in 2020. That was the year of the pause. Remember, they paused rents, they paused foreclosures, they paused, in some cases, utilities, they paused everything. Pretty much at some point was paused, right? Here we are 4 years plus later, right? And we're still having to pause things because people are so broke. Again, where is the strong consumer? Where's the economic recovery that they've been talking about for the last few years? And if inflation is getting better, or if inflation is cooling, as they like to tell us, wouldn't people have more money now? And wouldn't they be able to continue making their payments, or at least not have to pause the payments? All right, folks, you can see this is a big scam, big scam. So we'll see. It'll probably get worse here as we go down the road here. Let's talk about this here. Central banks, and this is Wall Street Journal reported this. Central banks expect to snap up more gold this year amid dollar pessimism. Right? So if the dollar had a strong future, why are central banks continuing to snap up gold? Right? We see this is the biggest thing that these banks are accumulating, right? Something big is ahead. Something big down the road is ahead for precious metals. And it's not just that precious metals are going to go up because of inflation and that's going to be a good investment. Sure, that's true. but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think you're going to see massive changes to our monetary system in the very near future. Now, we've got a bumpy ride ahead of us before we get there, unfortunately, and we all need to invest accordingly here. Even CBS came out with this. CBS, why you should invest in gold before the July inflation report is released, right? Why you should invest in gold before the July inflation report. So they see it coming. They see inflation's likely going to get worse when we get the reading here later this month. Is it going to cause gold to go up even more? And will silver start going up again? Oh, and silver, by the way, remember right here on this channel, when silver hit with $32, I said, do not chase the silver. Don't go out and buy, don't throw your whole investment portfolio at silver at $32. As I said, there will likely be a pullback. And I was exactly correct here. Let me bring up a chart on this because I think pretty close to the dollar, what I said was going to happen actually happened here in the price of silver and the pullback. Bring up a chart for you here. It is loading. And take a look here. So we saw it spike up. Remember, it went from, was it down here, $26. In a matter of days, it spiked up to $32. And what did I say right here? I said that's nice, that's great, but it's too fast, too high, too far, too fast. I said there's going to be a pullback. It bounced around back up to 32 again, bounced around, bounced around. We dropped down to $29, actually just under $29. And I think I said something to the effect of, well, if it does dip below 29, it's going to be sort of like a trampoline. You may see it dip down, but then it's going to bounce back up pretty quickly. Well, it is bouncing back up. So we're now at 29.70 approximately. But remember what I said, do not chase at the $32 mark. So if we waited for a pullback, much better time to buy now. Actually, I might scoop up a few more ounces here in the $29 range. And of course, you're going to have to pay a little bit of an additional premium to your bullion dealer. But that's, going to be a major, major winning investment in just a few years. It's going to be a big pay. It's already been a big payoff, right? If you've been on this channel, you've probably been buying ever since we started talking about it under $15, right? We said buy, and I said keep stacking. And so to those of you that got in with me, that have been doing this, some of you had doubled your money for the ounces or for the metals that you bought back, back when it was $15 or less per ounce here. All right, but let's move on here. Another article here wanted to bring up here, another piece of important data. 4th of July holiday coming up here. The cost of cooking out, now it's still cheaper than going to a restaurant. I've been cooking out more lately. Shoppers feel the pinch of inflation as they stock up for holiday cookouts. 4th of July holiday may cost you more than in past years. Well, it probably is. My favorite place to shop is grocery outlet. I actually walk out of there feeling like I got something for my money. According to a survey by American Farm Bureau, the cost of an Independence Day meal is up 5% from last year. Actually, not bad. Still more than the official inflation number. All right, so if inflation was under 3%, why are they saying the cost of a meal is up 5%? The survey says the cost of holiday staples like hamburgers, baked beans, and potato salad reached a record high in 2024. It's interesting. How did it reach a record high in 2024 if Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell told us that inflation was cooling? It seems like it would have been lower and it would have went below where it was in 2023. But no, it actually reached a record high in 2024. So someone wasn't telling us the truth when they said inflation was cooling. Oh, that's right. Cooling inflation doesn't mean things are getting easier. It just means things continue to get more expensive, just less quickly than it did previously. All right, you know this. Let's go ahead and move on here. More on the bank stress test and the Fed's, which I think is a phony stress test, right? With losses right now, unrealized losses, just as bad and worse if you look at all the different loans that are out there right now, worse than 2008. Here's how it's being reported. Big U.S. banks withstand the Fed's commercial real estate shock scenario in a stress test. So let me get this straight. With record unrealized losses in commercial real estate, the banks passed the stress test, right? We talked about this. This is very similar to right before the financial crisis in 2008. Remember, the banks were AAA rated. The subprime mortgages were contained. There would be no fallout unless if the same thing happens this time. They're going to allow some banks to fail and some banks are going to be propped up no matter what. So when we talk about bank failures, there's some people out there saying banks have to fail. It's going to be a domino, a whole string of bank failures. Sure, if they let it happen. Do any banks have to fail? No, no. Look at the national debt approaching $35 trillion. You don't think they can add on. I get hyped up talking about this. Sorry, I tongue twisting all this stuff because this stuff gets me so I don't want to say enraged. It gets me so enthusiastic. Let's put it that way. Nearly $35 trillion in national debt. You think they can't go out and put another $35 trillion in national debt, borrow more money to keep all these banks propped up? Of course they can. There's no limit on this. If you think there's a limit on it, go do a search and see. You're gonna find out there's no limit on this. We came off the gold standard in 1971. Ever since then, there's no limit. Right? They can chalk up another $35 trillion in debt. This could go to 70 trillion in 3 years if they really wanted to. They could borrow so much money, click of a mouse, they can keep all the banks propped up, unlimited amounts of money they can create in the background. Will they do that? No, of course not. They want the consolidation. They're going to allow a lot of regional banks to fail, a lot of smaller local community banks to fail. You think they're going to let any of the big mega banks fail? Right? Of course not. I mean, let me know what you think down in the comments. This is the way I look at it. Am I wrong? Right? And if I'm wrong, tell me what the limit is. Is it going to be cut off at $40 trillion? You think they're really going to cut off the debt at some point? Oh, 40 trillion, this is the limit. 50 trillion, that's the limit. Folks, there's no limit, right? I see people down in the comments saying, okay, it's going to collapse at this date, at this day. Folks, it never has to collapse. If any collapse happens, it's going to be something so big it brings down the entire grid. It's going to bring down the entire money creation monster, money printer, whatever you want to call it, right? It's going to be something massive. We're talking about a 2020 2.0, World War III scenario, which is knocking on the doorstep, if you ask me. So definitely still be cautious. But saying these banks have to fail or this is too big for the Fed to contain, come on, folks. It's unlimited. It's unlimited. What don't you understand about unlimited, right? And again, I don't think they're going to keep all the banks propped up. They want certain banks to fail. So then a bigger bank can come in and buy it out. Consolidation. Another big bank comes in. If that one fails, and buys that one, and so forth and so on. Now, as far as the banks and their losses, it's not just the crashing of commercial real estate prices and these underwater loans. Look at this now. Something else just got added to the stack of bad news for the banks here. U.S. bank construction loan delinquencies hit highest level in 3 years. So it's not just the existing buildings and the loss of value for the empty commercial real estate buildings. It's now hitting construction loans, the highest delinquencies in 3 years. So even new construction loans are reaching delinquencies at basically crisis levels here pretty soon. All right, a few other things to touch on today. I mentioned at the beginning of the video this wealth transfer. The top 10% own most of everything. And I'm not even joking. Take a look at a couple of the sources that I have pulled up here. The wealthiest 10% of households are expected to receive and give the majority of wealth during the Great Wealth Transfer through 2045. And take a look at this. The transfer will be the concentration among the wealthy, the top 1% controlling as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Now, right now, if you just look at the top 10% own about as much as the bottom 90%, but it's going to be even more consolidation up to the top 1%. And here's how even the New York Times had to admit what's going on here. And I'll read it here. In the United States, the top 10% of households hold a majority of the wealth. A chart that shows wealth by percentile of wealth demonstrates that the top 10% holds $95 trillion of the nation's $140 trillion in wealth. And here's the kicker. While the bottom half only holds $4 trillion in wealth. So the entire bottom half of the population, 4 trillion, just the top 10%, $95 trillion, folks. Does anyone think that this was done by mistake, that this was some sort of accident, that this was just the way the ball bounces type of scenario? Or do we think this is all set up? It's set up for this to happen. The rich continue to get wealthier, to gain more and more wealth, and you go out and spend money. Even when they handed out stimulus checks, where did most of the stimulus checks go? It went back to the top 10% because people took it out. They took their checks. They went and spent them at the grocery store. The grocery store is dominated by uh, big mega companies now, food companies that put out most of the food. It's not your local farmer, folks. It's mostly big companies. People went out and put down payments on vehicles. Of course, the car industry, the car manufacturers, right? You see what I'm saying here, folks? So we're in a place right now where we spend money and they say that makes the economy looks good. That money that we spend mostly goes up to the top 10%. What can we do to fight back here? Well, the banking system is where it all begins. You know that this is all based on debt, right? All based on debt. What would possibly hurt the banks, right? We know that banks, including JP Morgan, they're shorting the heck out of silver. They're shorting the heck out of silver. They're keeping the price suppressed while accumulating silver. Same thing with the central banks, accumulating tons of gold and silver. How can you fight back? Buy silver today. That's how you fight back. Silver is the silver bullet in the banking vampire. I don't know how else to say it. Let me know what you think down below. What would you call it? But if you can keep stacking silver, eventually the price of the physical and the digital price that you see online is going to go up, and pretty soon they won't be able to hide it anymore. And that's how I think you can hide, or that's how I think you can fight back rather against this. But hey, maybe I'm just optimistic. Please let me know what you think about all this down in comments. What do you think about this manufacturing index down the last 19 out of 20 months? What do you think about the student loans? Have to repause their payments because inflation is going so low now that everybody's got so much extra money that I guess they can't pay their loans. Oh, look at that. Anyways, let me know what you think, folks. Keep stacking and make sure you subscribe and come back for more updates. Bye for now, everybody. Peace.